My name is Violet, and at 36, I hold the title of Chief Strategy Officer for a prominent financial corporation in Seattle. But in the eyes of my family, I've always been a failure. It doesn't matter what I've achieved, what I've built. To them, I am still the invisible child, the one they never truly see. Every June, like clockwork, they gather in Monterey Bay, the place where my childhood dreams once lived. Now it feels like a reminder of everything I was never meant to be. This year, no different. The email pinged in at exactly 9:00 a.m., Monday subject line in all caps. Don't forget the Spencer family gathering, summer, in Monterey. It came from Erin, my eldest sister, her tone cheerful, almost sickeningly upbeat, as though the family was thrilled to reunite. I knew better. I was just an afterthought, a name added to Phil's space. 7 years and no place to sleep. Rooms are full. Violet, maybe get a hotel nearby. My mother. Helen never missed a beat. That line was her constant year after year, a polite dismissal veiled as concern. I sat at my 28th floor office staring blankly at that email, the skyline of Seattle stretching beyond my window. Julia, my assistant, entered with 2 espressos, the sound of her heels clicking like an echo of a life I couldn't escape. Family reunion again? She asked, noting my dark expression. I nodded, suppressing a bitter laugh. Let me guess, no rooms again this year. Maybe Erin's daughter needs more space to create her art this time. Julia added, already knowing the answer. I didn't need to hear it. As usual that evening my mother would call, her voice honey-sweet, but always wrapped in conditions. Sweet Violet, I just don't want you to be uncomfortable. The roof's under renovation. Lily needs a quiet place to paint, you understand? Every year I would pretend I'd smile through the phone call and hang up. Not this year. This year was different. I looked at the letter on my desk. Executive Vice President, Northwest Region. The pinnacle of a decade's worth of work. A role earned after endless battles, sleepless nights, and ceaseless ambition. They never cared, probably never even noticed. I remembered the summer when I was 11, the summer everything changed. Violet, go, do the dishes. Mom and Erin have to get the reception ready. Meanwhile, Alex, my brother, was outside with Dad learning how to host. I stood in that suffocating kitchen, soap bubbles on my hands, my chest tightening with every burst of laughter from the porch. That moment marked the beginning. From then on, my place was clear support, not seen, not heard, just the backdrop to their shine. Erin, the radiant, Alex, the ambitious, and me, the one who stayed out of the spotlight, good enough not to be scolded, but never enough to be remembered. The buzz of my phone snapped me out of my reverie. Olivia, my best friend from high school, Monterey again. Want me to send emergency wine? Send me a one-way ticket out of this family tree instead. The phone buzzed again. A call from Mom. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I already knew what she'd say. A fake invitation veiled under the same false pretense. I turned away from the phone, looking out over the city, its silver glow dimming in the dusk. I had built this life on my own, a life they never bothered to ask about. They didn't care. But now something inside me had shifted, not pain, not resentment, but something colder, a quiet, steely resolve. I glanced at the photo Erin had posted from their pre-reunion picnic. Their happy faces gathered around fruit pies, my mother's comment under it. Family is everything. But I wasn't in that photo. I never was. Once I believed success would change things. I worked until I bled, convinced that if I just became good enough, they couldn't ignore me. But I was wrong. I remembered Mom's 70th birthday party, a luxury restaurant in San Francisco. I had flown in from Chicago, wearing a gray silk dress, carrying a gift I had selected in Florence. As I entered, Mom barely looked up. "Oh, Violet, you made it," she said, eyes gliding over me before she turned to Aaron. "That dress matches your eyes beautifully." Surrounded by crystal glasses and chandeliers, I stood there, alone. A guest at a party I was never truly invited to. And as Alex, who had failed time and time again, stood to give his speech, the applause erupted like the culmination of a performance I had never been allowed to audition for. And yet this time, something inside me was different. A quiet shift, the kind that never made a sound but would echo through everything I did from now on. "We must always believe in each other." Mom always said, her words dripping with the kind of certainty only she could muster. She'd said them with tears in her eyes as Dad clinked glasses with Uncle Stan as though they were listening to a legendary CEO deliver a keynote. No one mentioned my name. No one spoke of the multi-million-dollar deals I was managing, the endless hours I poured into my work. Not a single word, as though I didn't exist. Like I sat there silently forcing down cold pasta while Mom recounted Aaron's childhood fashion sense. She could color match dresses at 5 years old. Such natural taste. It didn't matter that I had redesigned the entire office at Brookwell Capital, winning an award for corporate interior design. No to Mom, a child's pink dress was worth far more than that. A few days later, I offered to help finance the repairs for the Monterey house. The front roof had been covered in moss for over a year. When I mentioned it, Mom's response was typical. "Oh, Aaron, and her husband got it. They're planning something. You're always so busy, I didn't want to bother you." Bother me. I swallowed that phrase as if it were a bitter pill. That house. My childhood sanctuary. The place where I learned to swim, where I read my first novels on the porch bench, where I once dreamed I'd marry someday. Now I was a stranger in my own home. I could feel the walls closing in, suffocating me with the weight of my own history. Olivia, the one friend who'd stayed, once told me, "You're not the failure in that family. They just can't handle the fact that the one they underestimated became the most successful." I had smiled at her words, not arguing, because deep down, I knew she was right. That night, I stayed up until 3:00 a.m. in my penthouse, gazing out over the glittering Seattle skyline, the city that had become my home. I opened my laptop and logged into a real estate platform, one I knew well. California Vacation Homes, the beachside estate, the family's old house. It had been listed quietly 3 weeks ago, and no one told me I knew why. They didn't think I had any reason to care, or worse, they thought I couldn't afford it. I clicked the screenshot, then sent it to Olivia with a single line. "It's time for the final move, not for revenge." No, this was something else. This was about reclaiming what had been mine all along. This time, they wouldn't be able to pretend I didn't exist. 2 weeks later, the email arrived, the final reminder about the family reunion. Aaron again pretending to be bubbly, pretending to be close. "Hey fam, don't forget second weekend of June. If you arrive early, help set up the BBQ tent." I opened the attachment, scanning the list. Everyone had their own room. Aaron and her husband were in the upstairs suite. Alex and his new girlfriend were in the West Wing. Even the kids had their own designated area. And me? Not a word, not a mention. Just one faint note at the bottom. "Violet, if attending, may want to book an Airbnb nearby. We're at full capacity. Hope that's okay." I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, the quiet hum of the city surrounding me. Not angry, not sad, just resigned. I had expected this, but this time, something clicked inside me, a sharp, cold realization. The weight of it felt different. This time, I wasn't excluded. I was beyond it. As the city fell silent, I reopened the real estate site, filtering for Monterey Vacation Homes. The estate appeared at the top. Its facade, once elegant, now faded, roof tiles stained a note beneath it. "Needs renovation, price reduced 20% from last year." I clicked on the transaction history. The home had been refinanced 2 years ago. The loan balance was barely touched. That's why they were desperate to sell. Family values, tradition. My family always boasted about these, claiming to preserve the legacy of a home that was now on the verge of being lost. They were trying to maintain appearances, hosting a reunion in a house that was about to be foreclosed. I sighed. As a child, that house had been my only safe place, but with every year, every dinner, I was excluded from every folding chair, every photo I was left out of. The house had become a symbol of everything I could never have, everything I was never allowed to be. And yet this time, something felt different. This time, I wasn't just going to watch it slip away. This time, I would take it back. That house, the Spencer estate, had always been a symbol of denial. A place where the truth of who I was and what I'd become was buried beneath layers of family expectations and silences. But now, I could turn it into something else. A proof that I was never the one left behind. The call to Laura came first thing the next morning. My attorney, my financial advisor. "You want to buy it?" she asked, a hint of surprise in her voice. "Under your real name?" I smiled, the kind of smile that no one could see. "No, use the holding company we set up last year." "Violet doesn't need to show up anywhere," she said, impressed. "Nicely done." Her laugh was light, but behind it, I could hear the thrill of what we were about to pull off. "I'll start the process. Don't tell anyone in the family. I've never told them anything," I replied, already knowing what that would mean. Not even when I made Forbes. No reason to start now. 3 weeks later, everything had fallen into place. The seller, a bank rep, didn't ask questions as long as the money came fast. I signed the contract in my Seattle office, the coffee still steaming on the table. As I lifted the pen from the final page, Laura's eyes met mine. "You're now the legal owner of the Spencer estate in Monterey Bay. Congratulations." I gripped the small, cold, sharp key in my hand. To anyone else, it was just a key. To me, it represented everything I had earned. Revenge. Restoration. But I didn't tell anyone. Not Olivia, not Julia, not even Remy, my closest colleague. It wasn't about them. It was about me. I simply scheduled a 3-day getaway to coincide with the family reunion weekend. I arrived in Monterey on Thursday morning, 3 days ahead of them. In the passenger seat was my Hermes bag, heavy with purpose, and a thick portfolio stamped with the Hansley Corporation logo. The merger I had finalized just hours before, worth over $400 million, had sent quiet tremors through the financial world. I had been at the helm of negotiations, the lead strategist. In less than a month, I would be stepping into the new role of international vice president based in Singapore. But I hadn't told my family about any of this. They never cared. To them, I had always been Violet, the quiet one, the distant one, the one who always skipped reunions. I used to think becoming chief strategy officer was the peak. But this was the turning point. That afternoon, an email arrived, subject line, simple. "Congratulations, you've earned this." It was the official offer letter from the board confirming my promotion. And for the first time in years, I cried. Not because of the title, not because of the bonus, but because for the first time in my life, I felt seen. As I sat on the balcony of the estate, the one that now legally belonged to me, the ocean breeze carried the salt of old memories. And then, Olivia called. She'd just wrapped her fall collection launch in Chicago. "I just read the financial report. You actually did it." "Yeah," I replied calmly, staring out at the horizon. "They picked me. Violet, you don't get it. You're on the front page of the business section in the Wall Street Review. My entire LinkedIn feed is flooded with shares of the article about you." I smiled faintly. The sun was beginning to set. I know, but my family probably hasn't seen it. Aaron is probably fuming somewhere, trying to figure out why Violet Spencer is now the youngest female executive ever promoted at Brookwell. Well, Aaron will say it's just someone with the same name, I said, dryly. And Alex probably thinks it's a hoax. Are they there yet? I'll be here to welcome them tomorrow morning. Don't forget to film their reactions. You deserve every second of this. I closed the call. There was no rush, no excitement, just a strange calm that settled over me. I used to dream of their approval, every holiday, every card I sent, hoping someone would call and say, "We're proud of you." But now, with the truth in print, I didn't need that anymore. The next morning, the national financial broadcast at 8:00 a.m. ran a nearly 2-minute segment on the Brookwell-Hansley deal. Footage of me in a deep navy suit, shaking hands with the Hansley CEO, appeared on screen with the caption, "Violet Spencer, the woman behind the billion-dollar deal that shifted the market." Then my phone blew up. The first message was from Mom. "Mom, sweetheart, was that you? I just saw the news." I didn't respond. Next came Aaron. "Media always loves to exaggerate, but congrats if it's true." I locked the screen without replying. Then Alex, "Need a startup advisor. I've got some ideas. Maybe we can collaborate." I laughed, not bitterly, just amused. For years they'd ignored me, and now one financial segment had them scrambling. No apologies, no acknowledgement of the past. Just opportunistic hope. I looked around the house. The walls were still the same color. But next week, my design team would be here, ready to transform it. From now on, this wouldn't be a house of quiet memories. This would be a monument to the quiet strength they'd always overlooked. I stood up, the soft creak of the chair beneath me, barely audible over the thumping pulse in my chest. The air was thick with the taste of salt, a distant reminder of the ocean beyond. I walked into the living room, the familiar space now heavy with the weight of what was to come. I pulled the travel dossier from HR, the glossy papers rustling in the stillness. Inside was the relocation plan to Singapore. A penthouse in Marina Bay awaited my tour, and a new team was waiting for my leadership. But that was for later. I had unfinished business first. The family would arrive the next morning, still thinking they were walking into their house, their home. They had no idea, and I would be the one to show them, not with words, but with the truth they couldn't ignore. The crunch of tires on gravel sliced through the quiet, echoing across the front gate. I poured myself coffee, the sound of the liquid splashing into the mug. The only thing anchoring me to the moment. Through the window, I saw Mom's SUV pull up first, followed by Aaron's car, and then Alex's. They stepped out, laughing, chatting, as though nothing had changed, like this was still their home. I set my mug down. The ceramic clinked softly. Slowly, I walked into the living room. The sharp click of my heels on the wooden floor, slicing through the tension. I reached the door and stopped. I could hear them outside. Mom's voice. "Confused, Aaron. Do you have your key?" "Of course, Mom," Aaron replied, her tone already laced with impatience. She inserted the key. Click, click, nothing. Alex tried next, turning the knob with a grunt of frustration. Still no luck. I smiled faintly, my fingers brushing the cool metal of the door handle. I opened it from the inside, my grip firm, the wood giving way gently. The three of them froze. Their eyes widened, as if I had just stepped out of the wrong universe. Violet. Mom squinted, her voice trembling. What? What are you doing here?" I tilted my head slightly, the smile on my lips soft as a sea breeze, but sharp as steel. "Welcome to the Monterey estate," I said, stepping aside to let them in. "Please come in." Aaron stepped forward. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Wait a second." he said, his voice tight with disbelief. Mom tried the key twice and it didn't work. How did you get in? Who gave you a key? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked into the living room where I had laid out a large folder bearing the Reverence Hotel logo. It was a 5-star resort just 10 minutes away. On top of the folder were labeled envelopes for each family member, each containing a golden room keycard. There's something you should probably know, I said, turning to face Mom directly. This house no longer belongs to the family. The words hung in the air. Silence. I spoke again, my voice firm, each syllable carved with intent. I bought the estate over a month ago under my private holding company. From now on, anything that happens in this house, including reunions, requires permission from the legal owner. I swept my gaze over each of them, their faces frozen in disbelief, the polite smiles that had always been their armor. They couldn't hide it now. Alex was the first to react, his voice tinged with disbelief. Hold on, you're saying you bought this place with what? Your salary? No, I said, my lips curling into a subtle smile, with equity and executive rights from the merger I just led. It's valued at over $400 million. I pulled out my iPad, opened the news story, and showed them the footage of me shaking hands with the Hansley CEO. If you followed the news instead of chasing altcoins, I added dryly. Maybe you'd know. Aaron stepped back slightly, a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. Violet, why didn't you tell anyone? Why do it this way? I raised my chin, the question burning through me. When was the last time any of them had ever asked? When's the last time any of you checked in on how I was really doing? I asked, the words sharp and cutting through the silence like a blade. I remembered Mom's birthday 2 years ago. I stood at the party table smiling politely, and Mom had asked me to step aside so she could take a family photo. I wasn't in it. I glanced back at the 3 of them still standing in the entryway, the weight of my words settling like dust. So what now? Are we still having the reunion here? Alex asked, his voice cracking slightly under the pressure. I shook my head slowly, sliding the hotel folder toward them. I've reserved the entire top floor of the NCE hotel for the family. I said, my voice quiet, controlled. Private rooms, a kid zone, a BBQ terrace, even a gallery space if you want to hang those old photos. Alex opened his envelope, pulling out the room key and the calligraphy-style invitation. His throat worked, swallowing hard. So, what about you? Aaron asked, his brow furrowed. Aren't you coming? I smiled faintly, the corner of my lips twitching upward. I'll be staying here, I said calmly. I have work. I'm preparing for my relocation. The door clicked softly behind me as they stood frozen in the entryway, the sound of my heels fading as I turned away, leaving them to their confusion. Relocation to where Mom asked, her voice hoarse, cracking under the weight of the question. I took a slow sip of my coffee, the warmth of the cup grounding me, reminding me that there was no rush. Singapore, I replied calmly, eyes steady. International Vice President. I'll be leading the entire Asian market starting next quarter. There was a long silence as the words sank in. My family stood frozen, their faces a blend of disbelief and resignation. No one spoke for several seconds. The sound of the ocean breeze outside, the only noise filling the space, felt almost suffocating. Finally, Mom stood, her hand trembling as she held the keycard. Her eyes were wide with something like regret, something I had never seen in her before. I'm sorry, I didn't reply, she whispered. The words hung in the air, heavy, but not enough to break the silence that had settled between us. I nodded slightly. I didn't need to say anything. There was nothing more to say. Violet? Aaron's voice was quiet now, subdued. Whatever else. You did it. You made it. You surpassed all of us. I didn't answer immediately. I just stared at him, my gaze steady and unflinching. I don't need to be better than anyone, I said quietly. I just wanted to be treated like part of the family. Something no one's done for the past 20 years. The words landed with a soft thud. I walked them to the door without bitterness, without spite. They left quietly, stepping into their cars and driving away from the house they once believed was theirs. The house I had reclaimed. The door clicked shut behind them. The sound of the lock sliding into place was sharp final. And as I stood there, I felt nothing. There was no satisfaction, no sense of victory, just a quiet stillness. The kind that comes when you're the last one still standing, after everything else has fallen away. The next afternoon, as sunlight slanted across the porch, Mom stood at the door of the estate again. This time, she didn't have luggage or an old key. She held a small wooden box tightly in her hands. Her eyes were hollow, drained of sleep, the weight of regret etched deeply into her face. I opened the door and we stood there in silence. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said, her voice hoarse, worn. I have something I think you should keep." She handed me the box, a worn oak case. The corners were rounded with age, but the surface had been carefully wiped clean. I lifted the lid, and inside were yellowed newspaper clippings with headlines I recognized immediately. Young executive leads record-breaking investment deal. The woman behind Brooke Wells' rise. Top under 35. Alongside them were my college transcripts, my MBA graduation certificate, and a copy of my award-winning thesis. I paused. I thought, "You didn't care." I whispered the words, slipping out before I could stop them. "I thought so too," she replied, her eyes still on the box. "But every time I saw your name somewhere, I cut it out and kept it like a habit." I told myself you didn't need me, that you'd grown too far beyond my reach. I was afraid you'd succeed without me in the picture. I closed the lid gently, the quiet click of the box cutting through the heavy air. You stayed silent all these years just because of pride. She nodded, tears slipping down her hands, pooling in the cracks of the old box. "I was wrong. You don't have to forgive me now. I want you to know I've been watching every step you've taken." Even if I stayed silent for too long, I didn't answer. I just stepped aside, holding the door open for her. "Come in. There's coffee." As she stepped inside, I didn't see the confident woman who once commanded attention with a glance. The woman who had sat at the head of every reunion table. Now she was just a mother, broken by time, who had missed her chance to love at the right time, trying to piece together a fractured memory. 3 hours later, just as the sun was fully set, the gate opened again. Trinity stepped out first. No makeup, no heels. She wore an oversized blouse and jeans, holding a thick book and an iced tea in her hands. "You still like reading on the balcony?" she asked, attempting a smile, but the sadness in her eyes was hard to miss. Nelson followed behind, arms full with a file folder and his laptop. He looked sheepish, almost awkward, seeing me standing there between our mother and older sister, but no one turned away. "We're not here to apologize," Trinity said softly but clearly. "We know one afternoon can't fix 10 years of neglect," Nelson added. "I've enrolled in an online business management course. Not to brag, just to start over. If you're willing, I'd like your guidance." I stood still, staring at them, at the two people who had once been symbols of the favoritism I never had. And now here they were standing before me with real eyes and real words. "Things don't change overnight," I said slowly. "But at least today, we're finally listening to each other." Trinity nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I've taken a 3-month leave from the law firm. I plan to fly out to Singapore to visit you if that's okay. I was surprised. She quickly added, not to tell you what to do. Just because you're my sister and I don't want to look back one day and realize I missed my chance. I pulled out a chair. Sit down, your tea's going cold. We sat there, the four of us, beneath the sunset that cast deep orange light over the sea. People who had once lost each other, now speaking not with blame, but with a real desire to reconnect. Inside me, something shifted. Not quite forgiveness, but the beginning of acceptance. And sometimes, that's more powerful than any form of revenge. My flight to Hong Kong was scheduled for early Monday morning. I had nearly everything ready. Documents for the Asian Executive Board, the keys to a high-rise apartment overlooking Victoria Harbor, and a suitcase filled with hope and caution. This was only the beginning. Sunday afternoon arrived quietly. The gentle hum of my old office, the only sound as I sorted through papers. And then, as if summoned by the weight of the moment, Mom appeared at the door. Her face was thoughtful, her hands empty, and for the first time in years, she looked vulnerable. Do you have a moment? She asked, her voice soft, almost hesitant, like the last streak of sunlight before dusk. I looked up the room, still heavy, with the weight of unspoken words, and nodded. Come in, I said, my tone steady, though something within me shifted. She sat down, watching me as I closed my laptop. The air between us, thick with the tension of everything left unsaid. She spoke first, her words soft, but deliberate. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, she said, her eyes searching mine. But if you'll allow it, I'd like to start over. From the beginning, on your terms. I met her gaze, my heart unexpectedly softening in the silence that followed. After a long moment, I spoke, my voice slow and measured. Then listen carefully, I said. No more favoritism. No more dinners, where I'm just background noise. If you truly want to rebuild this relationship, it starts with listening and respect. Her face remained calm. No excuses, no defense. I understand, and I'll try to learn that. The evening brought a surprising shift. Erin came by alone this time, a folded map in her hands marked with tourist spots around Hong Kong. Her eyes were different, no longer the challenging gaze of the older sister who had always seemed to have it all. Not to control you, she said with a sheepish smile. You once said you wanted to see the world. I just wanted to contribute if I could. I looked at her, my thoughts a blur. All those years spent in the shadow of the perfect big sister. And now, Erin's eyes didn't challenge me. They invited me patiently, genuinely. You can visit? I said the words, calm but firm. As long as you come as a sister, not a supervisor. She laughed. A real sister. Is that okay? I nodded, a genuine smile tugging at the corners of my lips. That night, for the first time in years, the entire family sat down for a simple meal at the Monterey estate. There were no raised voices, no competition for attention. No one fought to be heard. Mom, for the first time, let Nelson speak. He shared an idea for a startup one that was actually backed by proper market research. I'm not asking you to fund it, he said, raising his hands half-jokingly. Just so you know. But if you have time, could you look at the draft? I pulled out my iPad, tapping it with a quiet certainty. Send me the proposal. If you're serious, I'll give you a serious response. Nelson smiled, visibly relieved, and the conversation shifted as the evening wore on. But I couldn't shake the quiet sense of peace that settled over me. When dinner ended, I stepped out onto the balcony, the glass of water in my hand, as I gazed out at the distant lights on the sea. The reflection of those lights in the water seemed to echo something inside me, a reminder that the world was waiting. Mom joined me shortly after, standing beside me in the quiet, her voice soft as she broke the silence. "Are you really okay with moving that far?" she asked, her tone unsure, vulnerable. I turned to her, meeting her eyes with a calm certainty. "I'm okay," I said, "because this time I'm leaving as someone who was chosen, not someone who was left behind." She was quiet for a moment, considering my words before asking softly, "And this house?" I smiled gently, the warmth of the moment wrapping around me. "I'll rent it out seasonally, but if the whole family truly tries, I'm open to reserving summer each year for a reunion." She looked surprised, then smiled, a bittersweet glimmer in her eyes. "Really? One condition," I added firmly. "Each year, someone else hosts. Everyone contributes. No more showing up just to take photos for social media?" She laughed, a tear slipping down her cheek as she nodded. "I guess I'll have to relearn how to bake from scratch." I looked back at the house, the one that had once made me feel small, out of place, like an outsider in my own family. But now, it was lit up with warm light and real laughter, the echoes of a future that felt within reach. The next morning, as I rode in the taxi down the winding road away from the estate, I saw Aaron and Nelson standing on the porch waving. Mom held up a small sign that read, "Good luck, Violet." I smiled, my eyes misty, but not from sadness. This time, when the plane took off from California, carrying me into a new chapter, it wasn't to escape the past. It was to embrace the future I was leaving, to live on my own terms, to open the door for those who truly wanted to walk through it. The morning sky in Hong Kong felt foreign, sharp, and demanding. Nothing like California's soft hues, the gentle ocean breeze, or the scent of pine trees. Here the air breathed urgency. Energy pulsed through a city that never stopped, where every light was a reflection of ambition, a silent promise of what could be achieved if you only kept moving. I stood at the window of my new apartment, a warm cup of tea in hand, gazing out over the shimmering expanse of Victoria Harbor. This wasn't running away. It was a decision. A chapter closed and another one opening where I held the pen. For years, I believed that success was the answer to their dismissal, that if I climbed high enough, stood far enough, they would have to look up and regret. But now, with the title, the apartment, my name splashed across finance magazines, I realized something. Revenge only kept me bound to the past. They had built their truth, but I had built mine. I didn't need them to see my worth. I needed to believe it myself. Around noon, an email from Nelson arrived. Subject line: Week 1, Challenge. He attached a new business proposal with a short note. This time, I wrote it not to prove anything, but because I truly want to learn. "Thanks for giving me the chance." I smiled softly, typed a few edits, and sent it back with a single line. "It's never too late to begin again if you're sincere." That afternoon, Erin called. She was in New York attending a short leadership course. "I'll be in Hong Kong next month," she said, excitement in her voice. "Not to teach you anything, but to learn how to be a better sister." After we hung up, another message came through. This one from Mom. She'd sent a photo. The keepsake box was now placed neatly on the family altar beside a new family portrait. Beneath the frame, a handwritten note read, "Family is where you don't have to be perfect to be loved." I didn't cry, but my eyes burned, a familiar ache resurfacing. Throughout my childhood, I had longed for praise from Mom, recognition from Dad, a simple pat on the back from my brother, or a check-in from my sister. But growing up taught me something deeper. Family isn't just where you were born. It's where you're heard. It's where you're respected and allowed to be yourself, whether for the first or second time. True success isn't standing at the peak watching others bow, watching. It's standing firm in life in the storm without losing yourself to please anyone else. I could forgive them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. And I opened the door again, not out of weakness, but because I was strong enough to set clear conditions. If anyone wants to walk this path with me, I thought they must do so with honesty. No old hierarchies. No inherited rules. The next day, I stepped out of the shuttle at Calhoun headquarters. A young reporter rushed up, recorder in hand. "Ms. Violet, may I ask, what's your greatest success?" I paused, taking her in, realizing that I didn't have to beat anyone, as long as I didn't lose myself in the process. She blinked, then laughed. "That's tomorrow's headline." I shrugged, a faint smile playing at my lips, then walked into the glass tower. Its surface reflected the deep blue sky above, and with every step, I felt the weight of a truth I had long known, but had never fully embraced. True worth doesn't come from others' approval. It comes from daring to live authentically. Success isn't for revenge. It's for healing. It's about reclaiming your place in this world. Family, if it wants to be called family, must learn to change. It must learn to respect and walk beside you, not just when you're weak, but especially when you're strong. And sometimes learning to stand on your own is how you create a true home. What do you think about Violet's journey and how her family changed? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, powerful stories about life, family, and growth.